Madam President, um, thank you for giving us interview. What do you feel and how do you see how soon you can move ahead of the EU candidacy, and what can jeopardize this process for Georgia?
Well, I think we are moving towards EU candidacy. Of course, thanks to Ukraine in the first place, because this acceleration of the whole process would not have happened if it were not determined by this resistance of Ukraine, which has shown the whole of Europe that their security is linked to Ukraine and that Ukraine is fighting for our security. So it has really changed the approach to enlargement, and that is very important. For Georgia, we have done, and the Georgian population has done everything they could over the past years to move towards Europe. We have had our share of struggle and battle. We have resisted. Also, the Georgian resilience is a different character of that of Ukraine, of course, because of the dimension. But Georgian resilience has been not less. And each time there is a doubt about where Georgia wants to go, the Georgian population shows where it wants to go. So those are the reasons why I'm very optimistic. We're going to have elections by next October. And I'm sure that one of the results, and the main result of the election, whoever is elected, will be the support for our European way, European orientation, and that is what will get us further down the road towards the candidature enlargement and hopefully opening of negotiations as soon as possible. That's our road. And I will support that road all the way, as much as I can, and in all forms.
And what about the NATO expansion? What about the current situation? Do you think closer to NATO you become safer you are or not? Because the case with Ukraine shows that this gives a casus belli for Putin, for Russia.
No, I don't think so. That's not the explanation. The decision of Russia to invade Ukraine is one they took by themselves, and it was not a reaction to something. It was an action, an aggression. And I think that, of course, there is a red line that engulfs all the members of NATO, and that Putin doesn't dare to cross. And that has been proven over and over again. And of course, for all the countries of the post-Soviet space, Ukraine, Georgia, Moldova, it is clear that being within the NATO alliance is the way to be defended, protected, and we don't yet know any other way. The EU enlargement goes hand in hand with NATO enlargement, and that is the orientation that Georgia has inscribed in its own constitution.
But how, for example, recent comments by Donald Trump makes you worry? If he becomes a president, can he weaken NATO, and whether in that situation the NATO will be still a good way for Georgia?
Of course, I will not comment on American politics. That would not be proper. But what I can say is that in the same way as Georgia has no alternative to European integration and NATO integration, I don't think that US has any alternative but to remain the biggest ally in a very strong alliance for the future. So I'm confident there too.
You're familiar with this model that Ukraine also has chosen in the meantime when they sign a bilateral security agreements with some of the NATO members, right? Do you think this is a model that for Georgia will be also acceptable? And have you ever raised those questions in your discussions with Western leaders, with the NATO leaders?
I think it's a very good way. The same way as before the EU enlargement issue was progressing, there was the issue of getting into different EU programs to get closer to the European Union. In that same way, to get closer to each and every major ally in the alliance is a very good intermediate way. Of course, it doesn't change the ultimate objective, and it should not in any way either weaken or slow down the ultimate objective, but it's a very good way in between to get the support. Of course, today Ukraine is in a more desperate need for this type of bilateral arrangements, so it's no surprise that it starts with Ukraine. But if we can take example, I think it would be an interesting example.
So you would be open to start those negotiations? So you would think that you would be, you would want to open that kind of negotiations with?
Well, it's not for me only to decide, it's for the government to decide. But I think that there is a very interesting example, and it also, of course, depends on the willingness of the European partners to go down that line.
What concerns do you have that Vladimir Putin, will step up his war effort in Ukraine after he gets re-elected in March? How do you see, and broader, how do you see the situation evolving in 2024?
Well, I think that he's stepping up everything he can step up, and he's not waiting for re-election. But that doesn't mean that he's not in the process of losing this war. He has lost it in many regards. It can last and it can drag, but that's all that he's able to do. And I'm sure and I'm very confident that after the decision of the European Union, after the decision of the American Senate, that we are going to see the stepping up of the efforts of the allies to support Ukraine, because doing so is really supporting themselves. That's what the Vice President of the United States just said today, and I think it's something that should be remembered by each and every European country.
We learned today about the death of Alexey Navalny. I would like to ask you about what are your thoughts about it, but also you have Mikhail Saakashvili, who's also in a grave health situation.
No, I don't think that we can compare.
He can be, not just from humanitarian point of view. For example, will you be able to grant him?
No comparison. Comparison is no reason, and especially in this case, Georgia is not Russia, and I can only repeat that so many times. For what is the situation, the tragic situation with Alexey Navalny. If that is true, if that is confirmed, because his wife was just taking part in the conference right here, I think it would be disastrous and a tragedy for human rights, democracy all around the globe. For the situation in Russia, it will only confirm what is the regime today in Russia. But I think that for all of us around and in different parts of the globe, it will be a tragedy.